Today I thought I'd show you how I made my Thena weapon by making you a fresh new dagger. So first I went to the store, a plastics distributor actually. It was a plastic distributor that carried acrylic sheets in various thicknesses, and as well as a variety of other plastic products, such as a multiple diameter of extruded acrylic poles. So to start, I did in fact have square or rectangular pieces to work with. I have these two left over. I thought I might make something small with this, but today we're going to use this bigger chunk, and I'm going to make my own design dagger out of this acrylic sheet. So on the acrylic sheet there is a paper sticker on both sides, just like this one. This one originally had a paper sticker on it on the other side, and I've learned now to keep them both. So this is what it looks like when you remove the sticker. So here I'm just going to use the paper, and I've got two sides to work with, but I'm going to use the paper to design a dagger that I think kind of would go with the Thena Eternals power weapon theme.
I started to make this design and then just didn't really like it, so I went in with a different color. And some features that I've seen on the Thena weapons are this circular rune symbol, a prismatic or spearhead, and I've also seen the curved shapes. So this was my final design.
There we go. So we're going to take this out. There's lots of things that you can cut this with if you have various different saws in your arsenal, in your toolbox. I'm going to use a Dremel. The Dremel is going to melt the plastic too, so it will be messy, but let's take this outside and see what we've got. Okay, number one, working with your tools, the Dremel, we want to use safety goggles, safety mask. This is going to shred into tiny, tiny pieces and dust. You need to wear protection for this, or you could completely ruin your eyes or your lungs. Okay, you ready? Safety first. So for cutting this, you can use a jigsaw blade, or use a Dremel with a metal blade. Okay. We're going to take our time to cut.
I've used some clamps and a spare bit of wood to hold everything in place so it doesn't shift and move while I'm cutting. Throughout this process, you'll see me use a set of scissors to knock off the little plastic pieces that have been kind of melted and are sticking out. Don't try and brush it off with your hands, you'll just cut yourself. At times, we need to flip the piece over and cut from the other side. The Dremel just kind of causes everything to melt back together, so it's a little bit of a process to work through with this acrylic. Complex curves can also be an issue. Here I was trying to cut off the bigger pieces so I could work with smaller pieces as I worked on removing these smaller interior curves. Here you'll have a rough cut shape. The edges are pretty melted and rough at this time. We can remove the paper from both sides of the acrylic sheet. I'm bringing the Dremel back out now with a sanding drum to smooth down the edges. You can use pretty much whichever grit you'd like. Finer grit will take you a little bit longer, will give you a finer edge. I believe I used a coarse grit on this, and you'll see why it's your choice later in the video. For this size piece and edges, I need to use 2 separate Dremel bits. So we've got a nice smoothed edge in general. It's still a little bit coarse. There might be some sharp spots. And you can see where I even nicked the edges a little bit. Don't worry, those can be fixed here. And I'll show you what the rest of this process is as we move to the next stage. To finish the edges, we're going to use a melting tool of some kind. In this case, we're going to use some fire. This is just a creme brulee torch that we have. I don't have one of those giant torches on hand. And we're just going to quickly melt the edges. Now, it doesn't need a lot of heat to melt the edges, but you don't want to leave it in one space and make it bubble. You just want to gently heat to that softening point, and it kind of melts and makes it more clear again. Here I'm focusing a bit on where those scuff marks occurred when I lost my edge as I was Dremel smoothing. You can see that they kind of disappear if you just heat over them. It's not perfect, but it does kind of soften it again, just like the edges, and those marks disappear, just like that. And to slow it down a bit again, you can see how as it melts, it becomes more clear like glass on that edge. Time to add the detailed designs. I went ahead and traced my dagger onto a piece of paper just to work through how the lines are going to be shaped, where I want them to lay. Using this as a blueprint, I can then overlay the dagger again and trace with my heat tool that you'll see on the edge of that table. I have a heat tool here, basically a soldering iron. and it has a variety of tips. This one is just a long, straight, pointed tip, and it is set at its highest temperature, 450 degrees. I recommend a very high temperature tool for this. The plastic does not want to melt, so the hotter the tool, the better. Take your time to trace curves, lines, shapes. You can use your blueprint, or you can go off it as you want to add to or change your design. Let's super speed this up. I flipped the page over so I could get the design on the reverse side. You can't see it in this photo, but I was able to see the dark lines beneath the paper. And speed it up again. You can use a metal ruler for any straight lines that you need to make. As we get a little closer, we're going to finish this off. What I used was the Krylon 18 karat gold leafing pen. It's just a paint pen, but it is a very well-reviewed metallic gold pen. You can also see here that the dagger is clear and softened and burned on all edges and sides. Give the pen a good shake and just start tracing into your lines. The reason to burn the lines first was to give the place for the paint to stay, and also so that it gives a three-dimensionality to it. It gives a recessed look, so it almost is interior to the weapon. Like the gold wires are part of the makeup of the prop. As you trace your lines, feel free to do the edges, the corners, the tip, anywhere you think would connect the lines and add to the three-dimensional look. The gold leafing stage is finished, so here's a quick look at it. I wanted to show you one of the difficulties of working with either the paint or the material, but as I filled in the gold paint on every one of these props I've worked with, it caused tiny micro cracks where I put the paint. I'm trying to find some here, right along this edge. You can almost see that everywhere I put that paint, it is micro cracking. So the solution is to go back in with some heat and remelt and kind of soften that edge again so that it is melted closed. Again, if you focus on not burning it, but just melting it and being pretty quick with it, the paint bubbles a bit, but it doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't burn. Just don't force it to catch on fire. And here's a final look at my design for a dagger for Thena from the Eternals. The original project was the full spear for Thena, and here's a short little clip of the full product using the same methods that I just showed here, including a 1-inch diameter acrylic pole.